Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our first installment of Talkin' Marijuana for 2014. I hope everybody had a good vacation. Let's go around the horn here and do a little intros. I'm Barry Kramer. I am the patient operator of California Patients Alliance. We are a GLACA accredited dispensary here in Los Angeles, and if you're a patient, come on down and visit us.
Hi, my name is Yami Bolaños, and I am the patient operator for Pure Life Alternative Wellness Center, which is located at our new address, 6400 De Long Pre in Hollywood, California. I'm also the president and the founder of the Greater Los Angeles Collectives Alliance, which has been setting the mark of excellence in medical marijuana in the city of Los Angeles since 2006.
And hello, I'm Don Duncan. I'm the California Director of Americans for Safe Access.
And live here today, not in
Actually
Sacramento.
in studio.
Yeah.
You're a real person. Oh my God. It's like
As opposed
meeting
to an animated, projection.
I'm Dan Gabriel, comedian and pot enthusiast.
Howdy, everybody, and welcome to 2014
Happy
in the
New
world
Year,
of marijuana.
All right.
We're gonna let's do a little rundown of our topics today. This is what you're gonna be tuning in for. We're gonna talk about a swabbing program that's been instituted here in the city of Los Angeles. We'll stay local
Lucky
with
for
that.
us.
Then we're going to go national. We'll talk about Governor of New York having an executive order to enlist medical marijuana in this state. We're going to talk about Colorado coming online and January 1st and all that goes with that. There was quite a bit of news. There's a federal lawsuit out of San Diego questioning the legitimacy of the government to prosecute medical marijuana patients. An interesting story about a DEA agent who's moving out of the DEA and into the marijuana industry.
Smart guy.
There was a wonderful article in the Atlantic Monthly, and they talked about an age-old problem with marijuana, and that is the institutional caging of our citizens. And then a strange story out of Michigan, and the governor there trying to institute a new medical marijuana program in Michigan that will, we'll talk about it later, and you'll see what's up with that. So let's start local. And we'll talk about this swabbing, but you mentioned that you just moved your dispensary. Why would that be? Why did you do that?
In May of 2013, Measure D passed by 63% of the votes
the
in
voter
the
initiative
city
here
of
in
Los
Los
Angeles,
Angeles,
the
yeah.
voter initiative here in Los Angeles. And I was located 138 feet from a school in my location for 8 years where I never had a problem. But because of Prop D, we had to move our location to a compliant location, and we found one in Hollywood.
And there was a lot of moving and shuffling
Oh, my
around in
God.
Los Angeles, right? We had a deadline for this Prop D that had passed in May, and the deadline was December 17th. That all the 134 dispensaries that would be eligible had to be compliant by December 17th. And so there was quite a scramble in the city.
It sure
a lot
was.
of realigning and moving, a very complex situation of trying to find new locations that were compliant with all of the regulations that the city was imposing. But it's all played out. There's a big sigh of relief. And as we move into 2014, we're, I think, pretty hopeful that the situation in Los Angeles might start to...
I am. I'm very hopeful. You know what? I moved to Los Angeles from the San Francisco Bay Area in 2004 with the goal of passing an ordinance in LA, which I thought would take me about a year and a half. 10 years later, and it just took effect. So, I feel like there's a sort of closure to it and a kind of, mission accomplished vibe.
How many dispensaries were in the city in 2004 when you came?
Two or three, depending on who you ask.
And now over 1,000.
Right.
So that's what 10 years will do with unregulated, open.
But with Prop D, there's
economics.
supposed to be only 135 dispensaries in the city. And we'll see what happens. Enforcement should be happening soon. That's what we've been told by the city attorney.
And so the city attorney, Mike Fewer, has instituted a new program over the holidays here
Yes.
in Los Angeles, and it's a swabbing program.
Debuted on New Year's Eve.
Yes,
Debuted on New Year's Eve.
This is part of the DUI program, and which is a noble cause.
Absolutely.
But he went in the paper and said he's instituting this new swabbing program. They swab your cheek because there's so many, in part because there's so many medical marijuana dispensaries.
There's a lot-
people are obviously
Oh.
driving stoned.
Yeah, there's a lot of pot being smoked in LA, and he's going to make sure that the drivers are, sober.
So they
There's-
take a Q-tip and they swab the inside of your cheek, and then they run it through a thing, and
And it's checking for marijuana, cocaine. I think there was like 7 drugs
bunch
they
of
said
stuff, yeah.
that they're checking
They
for.
put a little damper on New Year's Eve for those that medicate. I would have to say
People
because
should not drive impaired, but it's really hard with cannabis to figure out where impairment stops and testing positive carries on. Because
Exactly.
Yeah.
with a blood test or a urine test, you test positive much longer than you're impaired. For a regular user, if you're doing even with a blood test, you've got days or weeks that you can test positive. With a urine test, because the metabolites of cannabis are fat soluble, that's going to test positive in your urine for a month or longer.
and they're working off. It's a new program, and really the confusion that came on New Year's Eve was everyone thought, "Oh my God, I'm going out. It's New Year's Eve. There are going to be these stops, checkpoints, and
swab points.
even though they said it was voluntary, people were a little nervous about. Well, if you don't take a breathalyzer,
You get your license suspended for a year.
it's a
And you go
voluntary.
to jail.
Right.
And you
Well,
take
can
jail,
you
yeah.
go, I don't want the swab, but I'd happily do the breathalyzer?
Yes, you can.
Unless
because
you've been
there's-
drinking, then
they
obviously
can't make you take the swab.
Yeah.
They can't
But
make
they,
you do it.
but
You
they
can refuse.
but they can take you to
no,
the
not,
station
not
if
for the
you
sw-
don't
No,
want to.
that's for the DUI. If they
Okay.
think that you've been drinking and you don't do the swab or the breathalyzer test, then you go to jail and you get a year. Suspension on your license. But with these swabs, you can refuse it. Even though any police that would try to make you do it would probably, tell you that you
They're
have
gonna
to.
guilt you
yeah,
into
they're going to
it,
guilt you
yeah.
into it. Yeah, but you don't have to take them. And I would never consent to one, only because what we know of these swabs, they're testing for marijuana and it's 5 nanograms. And 5 nanograms, if I smoked a joint today, in 2 weeks, I'd be testing over 5 nanograms. So that I will never take that test because they will say that I can't drive.
But 5 nanograms is the legal limit, if I am not
Colorado.
mistaken, in Colorado
Well,
at this point. So,
Barry and I were talking this morning, and we're pretty sure that you're going to test positive forever for cannabis.
Yeah, I know. I heard the story. Okay.
so Mike
You're
Fuhrer.
thoroughly saturated.
I'm thoroughly saturated. It
Mike
doesn't matter.
Fuhrer has said, medical marijuana dispensaries are prevalent here in Los Angeles. There are those who are driving under the influence of medical marijuana. But there's a lawyer, his name is Mike Gallagher, I believe, and he says, you have rights too. When an officer asks you to take the swab, you can say no for now.
For now.
Cops can do whatever they want if you consent. They can draw your blood. They can search your car. They can come to your house. Cops are always going to try
They're
to
like
use
vampires.
their badge.
Don't invite them in.
Yeah, don't do it. If you invite them, everything's free. So for them, you can say no, and you should say no for now. There are no laws on the books about this swabbing program. It's a new program. Fuhrer is trying to institute it, and he's one of the few urban
Well, how LA
areas
loves
that
to set trends, right?
Yeah,
So here we
absolutely.
go.
So they're trying to institute that. I'm sure we'll find out when it becomes a real
problem.
life.
Such
But no,
an
you're right.
invasion of your Q-tip.
Happy
I
New
thought
Year.
you were my friend.
Right?
But know your rights. You don't have to take the swab test if you don't want to.
So know your
rights. Eliminate a problem or two.
And be careful with the cannabis in the car. I always
Yes,
tell
of
people if
course.
you're going to travel with cannabis, put it in the trunk and don't smoke it in the car.
Right.
Always
Yeah.
do
You're gonna
best
get busted.
practices personally.
No way
yeah.
would if you had a edible with the swab.
Of course.
I don't know, would it?
Well, I don't
I don't know
just a
either.
smoking thing?
Well, I thought about that because if they're testing, if you ate the edible, then you would have residue in your mouth, right? I don't know. How does
Maybe.
that work?
Or
That's
if you-
interesting.
Residue
Yeah.
of chocolate
if
chip
you had
cookie
the-
Yeah,
or
or residue of an oatmeal
marijuana?
cookie.
Yeah, it turns out you're sober, but your fat and sugar content is through the roof.
Yeah.
You gotta
You
back
really
off a
should
little.
get your cholesterol down.
So the
That's what
point
cop's
is,
gonna tell
when
you.
driving, use edibles. No, kidding.
No. No.
I have a question. Would it be worse if it was? I've seen there's edibles that are like candies that dissolve in the mouth. Would
Right.
that make it even worse because it's saturating inside your mouth and your gums and everything.
I don't know
We
if
need
it's
to do
gonna
a little
test.
research.
Yeah.
What are
I
they?
don't know.
Is it the smoke? Is it that they're picking up, or is it the oils, or what?
Things, there's different.
We need to ask those questions, Angelo. We will.
We will.
Let's call the city attorney. Let's get him on the phone.
Now, these are definitely going to be coming up, and this program is going to be publicized more here in Los Angeles, and we'll stay on the story for sure. A great story out of a huge urban area is, and not just an urban area because he's the governor of the state, but Governor Cuomo in New
Yay.
York over the weekend, and I think tomorrow, Wednesday, is going to have a press conference about this. He is, by executive order, leaping over the state legislature and allowing for a very limited number of medical marijuana outlets that are going to be through hospitals. And from my understanding, it's based on an old state law from the 80s that would have allowed for medical marijuana in the 80s in New York. He's revived it, reworked it a little bit, and he's going to allow these 20 hospitals to, for a limited amount of patients, to dispense medical marijuana. We don't know yet what the symptoms are that will be allowed for this, and nobody knows that. And so the story really out of New York is that now the door is slightly open. They can start to see how medical marijuana works for their constituents in the state, and then they can go to the legislature to make a solid law that will allow them to move forward with a medical marijuana program in the state.
Which is good. That'll be 21
it's
states with medical
excellent.
marijuana. Also, if New York is a medical marijuana state, that means most Americans will live in medical marijuana states. With California and New York, we've got the
The
majority.
most populated states.
Now, here's what I wonder. In other states, hospitals can't touch medical cannabis because of the federal law. So how is it in New York that the hospitals can go out on this legal limb and risk their status with the federal government and even prosecution by the federal government by providing under federal law, a controlled substance?
Well, no, any way that they're going to do it, I applaud it. I applaud Mr. Cuomo. That's
And
really
can
took
he be
some-
personally responsible for it, since it's his executive order
Order.
that is allowing this to happen? Can the feds
Prosecute
would they
him?
sue him, not the
Or
state,
prosecute
really?
him?
You know what I mean? I think
If they don't want
if I
this to
worry
go
about prosecution, I don't worry about a lawsuit. I worry about DEA agents raiding a hospital
Oh,
and
absolutely.
arresting the nurse who's passing out the medical marijuana.
That would be really bad publicity
It would be
for
bad
the
publicity.
DEA.
But remember, the DEA is not an elected office. You know?
That's
They don't
true.
care.
These guys are administrative officers.
But it would be
But it'd be a black eye for the administration.
It would be, yeah.
For sure.
But this is also good to show other governors that they can jump over.
Exactly. To have some balls and stand up for the
Yeah.
constituents and care about
How
medical
come
marijuana
Jerry
and the
Brown
patients that
hasn't
need it.
done more? I thought that Governor Moonbeam was going to.
Yeah, he's
Done
done
a lot of
he's
things.
done a bit, but and he certainly hasn't stopped things like Governor Schwarzenegger did.
Oh, yes.
Although
Or Christie.
Jerry
Christie.
Brown, he's okay on this
He's
issue.
okay. He's okay on this issue. It's not
our
a golden-
listeners, we should remind that Jerry Brown in California, our Governor Moonbeam here.
yeah.
He
Well-
was the mayor of Oakland. That's where it's the center
Well,
of
Mr. Cuomo's leading by example, and I applaud
So
his
Yeah.
example.
Here's a question.
Yay.
There's a press conference on Wednesday. How long until every dispensary in Colorado has a Cuomo Kush on the board? 10 minutes, 20 minutes?
20
Yeah,
minutes. It's gonna be
it's there
here.
right now.
I don't know.
gonna
They
be
have the
here.
logo together.
Well, I find it really interesting. You know, we've definitely crossed the line in marijuana acceptance, whether it be legal or medical in the country. And we're hearing, you know, like I said, later we have an article from the Atlantic Monthly. We know CNN does almost daily stories now on marijuana, whether again it be legal or medical. Really prestigious news organizations and magazines and all kinds of news outlets are now on board in a much better way. They're more educated, although they still have a little bit of catching up to do. And then we have all the states that are now, you know, we have Washington legal, Colorado legal. Both are different themes of how to do it, or different schemes how to do it.
Paradigms, if you will.
Paradigms. And we're going to find that when Colorado comes on, or when California comes on, and Alaska might come on this year with legal. Everyone's going to have their own way of doing it, trying to figure it out. And I find this such a fascinating time. Cuomo now stepping in and doing something no one's done before, executive order, overstepping the state legislatures. It's very interesting, and we only have more of that to look forward to in 2014, because there are a number of states that are going to put legalization on their ballot.
And the money is going to drive a lot of it. Colorado made a fortune that first day, or
Oh,
fortune
yeah.
was
Over $1
spent.
million
Over
here
$1
in
million
Colorado,
that
yeah.
first day. a lot of people are looking at that, and a lot of states are just going to try to control the distribution of it and make sure that all the money goes in their pockets, and that's where we need
It's all about the money, like in Washington.
Well, let's take a little break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about Colorado and the money that's been going on there and the press that's been going on in Colorado, and we'll hit some of those other topics, but definitely Colorado when we get back from the break. We'll see you soon.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi everybody, Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hey, we're back talking marijuana here in Los Angeles at Universal City Walk's John Lovitz Comedy Club.
Show number one.
Show number one for 214. We're talking Colorado. Colorado, January 1st, came on board with legal marijuana, the first state in the world.
Washington also, but
they missed their deadline.
They missed their
deadline.
deadline, so they're not quite. They're legal. There is legal marijuana in Washington, but they don't have their regulatory system in place yet, and they're not sort of open for business as Colorado was on January 1st. And Colorado's been legal for a year, and they just came sort of open for business on January 1st. I guess the biggest story out of that was, for me, that it was a successful launch, that it went off pretty much without a hitch.
even though there
sky's
were
not
news
falling.
stories about 37 people dying.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that was crazy.
we'll sort of work
stuff.
our way into that
Into the
because that was a
stories,
big
yeah.
story. There were a lot of hoax media things that went on, and that was interesting. But let's stick with just it coming on board and all the positive things
that came out of
happened.
it. Our friend Cynthia Johnson with the Normal Women's Alliance, and she's been on the show here with us, was the 7th person in Colorado to buy legal pot. Okay, and she's a California resident. So it was very interesting.
Did they charge her double?
No, they didn't charge her double. They didn't start doing that until the end of the day. I
Right,
think.
right.
You know?
No, you're
And she
thinking
was
about lift tickets.
So she was very excited and felt like it was a combination of many years of advocate work and advocacy for her, and where she's been with it all over, the United States with it and stuff, and that she felt very accomplished and empowered that she was there and able to do that. So that's a very wonderful feeling.
It's a very exciting
Yeah.
time for
Very
advocates
exciting
to
thing,
see
yes.
that finally
So-
happen. I, as much as we all work for that,
Yes.
I don't know who of us really expected to see the day
Yeah.
that it was actually going to
Legal.
become
I feel
legal.
like we all are approaching it like, okay, when's the other shoe gonna drop? Like, where's the catch?
The shoes that are
Right?
dropping
And
now.
it may be
are-
there. I don't know. Who knows? I hope
think,
not. But
I think it'd be awfully hard to get this genie back in its
Into the
bottle
bottle,
at this
uh-huh.
point.
you can never get it back in the bottle. I think that there'll be some pushback at some point. It's going to be a blowback on this.
But we're here to stay.
Well,
we're
they're
not
gonna
going
swab
away.
the genie back into the bottle. That's what's gonna happen.
Well, it's interesting to me. I had a patient. It's sort of like what we come to expect and how quickly we come to expect it. This has been a long fight. Don, I know you've been an advocate longer than anyone here,
I'm old,
certainly.
yeah.
And the advocacy goes on long before you were involved
Sure,
to
sure.
get this
Decades.
legal. And sort of in a micro way, when it became legal medically here in Los Angeles, in California, it wasn't very long after until the people that hadn't had the fight but were gaining the benefit of it, our patients and such, just took it for granted that
right, yeah.
this was how it is.
Well, imagine this: if you're a young person today, you're just out of high school, just starting college
Yeah.
age.
It's legal.
Cannabis has always been legal for you.
Exactly.
Always.
Absolutely.
And so that there's a complete, I think, absence of the reality that we all grew up in, where this was a crime and you could
And
go
that
to
we're
jail.
still
and,
in.
Like,
It's
it was
not
all in the
like we can
shadows.
You can
just
still get busted
try
and go to
driving
jail.
through Texas with it.
It's
You'll
horrible.
find out just how.
But here in
illegal
California,
it is.
from 1996 forward, pretty much anybody who could pay a doctor could avail themselves of the medical cannabis program here. So for a whole generation of Californians now, cannabis has always been legal. Their whole
Exactly.
adult life, it's been legal. As soon as they were old enough to even know what it was, they
So
knew
I had a
it was
patient
around.
call me the other day. She's like, "Hey, I just had a brainstorm. What if my husband needed his medication from the pharmacy and we were away? We were up north in Northern California, and they delivered it to him. So I'm wondering, can I get my marijuana delivered to me? Can I get like a weekly delivery from you? And can it be shipped here or there?" I'm like, it's still federally illegal.
Now, a private carrier, maybe.
A private carrier, maybe, but you would need to check their
If they'll agree to do it
long,
right?
unreadable contract
I'm
that you
sure
signed, because I'm
FedEx
sure
doesn't
someone
do
in
that,
there
yeah.
No.
that they say, we won't take federally illegal substances through the mail. So it is always my position to stay as legal and as follow the letter of the law as much as you can. And at this point, we're not there. However,
But
just
it feels
going
like
back
we
to my
are.
old,
Yeah.
my original thought here, so many people just take it for granted now and are like, well, hey, why can't I, just go down there and, get my joint and smoke it on the street and blah, blah, blah. We're not there, everybody.
No.
We're just not there. Yay for Colorado, yay for Washington. They have a long road ahead of them, and they are going to be under a very watchful eye as to how this grows. And I do believe now, and I feel it, this is the hopeful part of me, that we're getting to a point where, it's just marijuana, send it.
The problem is that, like you say, in some states it's different from other states. Here in California, you go up north in San Francisco, Sacramento, Oakland, people are so much more relaxed about it than we are.
Yeah.
I mean, I go up north and the advocates after dinner at a restaurant in the city go outside and smoke a joint. You don't do that here in LA because you could get busted. I mean, it is not as relaxed in
But
LA
that's
as
an
it is in
attitude. It's not everywhere north of that's mainly like San
North,
Francisco.
north,
You
the
go
north,
a
yeah.
couple. You go an hour outside of San Francisco
If you
in
go to
any
Marin,
direction.
if you go to
and
Marin,
it's
they're
not
probably
cool
not
anymore.
doing that even.
Well,
Probably.
Marin is a bad example, but Modesto definitely you're not getting away with that crap. It's an in the city safeness. And I grew up in San Francisco, and I grew up with that cushion of like, we can smoke a joint on the street at San Francisco. And then I moved down to LA, and the same people I was smoking a joint with on the street are like, no, we gotta go inside.
Yeah.
We gotta go to lockdown. And
So even between the north and the south, there's a huge difference in California.
Absolutely.
Our attitudes and how we act around law enforcement and everything, because we're a lot more cautious down here.
Well, it is the country's grand experiment, and it's being worked out everywhere. And we're, as much as we feel we've gained, we're still, I believe, in the infancy of this new industry. We see it with even the exteriors of the industry, the people that aren't involved directly in marijuana, but advertising, business organizations, the Staples, everybody is interested in what this industry is going to grow into because it's going to create
because
jobs.
everybody wants
a lot
to make
of money to be
money.
made off of it.
Yes, the end game on all of this, that everybody that's getting into this game now or getting involved, is about money. Everybody wants
But
to make
is it
money.
about the money that's going to be made through legalization, or is it the money that's made through prohibition? Because the money that's made through prohibition is huge.
Well, you're going
And
to have
you
two
can't-
camps fighting each other for sure on that. But I believe that entrepreneurship and the money that can be made with making it legal is going to far outweigh the money that can be made by the few people who can make money keeping you down for prohibition.
Yeah.
Well, those people are.
They have
been going
they have
strong for a
entrenched
long
lobbyists
time.
at this point.
There's
The
pharmaceuticals. It's
prison
prison
system. Well,
guards
it's
unions.
mostly law
it's-
enforcement.
And law
mostly law
enforcement.
enforcement.
And those are the ones that can do the most damage.
With all the news, with all the, like I said, magazines, newspaper reports, television. There's so much going on now. I feel law enforcement is having a harder time keeping up the lies that they continually throw out because people are saying, well, that's not really happening. I saw Piers Morgan last night had a roundtable of 4 people. Ethan Nadelman was on there from Drug Policy Alliance, and there were 2 people that were addict counselors. And the addict counselors had all the old arguments. And Ethan Nadelman said, but the overpowering thing is that all of that was illegal. And so you were creating those problems by keeping this substance illegal. And, in legalizing it, we can control it, regulate it, and move it into the light.
Law enforcement is our primary opponent in the fight for medical cannabis and cannabis in general. But the rank and file officers don't have the heart for this and the enthusiasm for it that the leadership of law enforcement does, or the law enforcement lobbyist. And there's a feedback loop in California and in the other state legislatures and in Congress where lobbyists influence clients and clients influence lobbyists. And I really do think that there's a disconnect between the decision makers about what law enforcement policy is going to be, because there's politics involved in law enforcement, and the lobbyists that they employ, whether it be in Sacramento, Washington, D.C., or Denver, they're feeding off each other at some level, and they've disconnected a little bit from the base. Because most police officers that I've talked to, whether they want cannabis legal or not, don't consider it a very big deal. They have opinions about dealers and smuggling and all of that and those issues. But when it comes to people smoking cannabis, they're not that worried about it. And yet the people who run the organizations, like the California Narcotics Officers Association and the other lobby groups, and make no mistake, the Prison Guards Union, they're huge lobby groups. And they're very influential. The people who are running those organizations and setting those agendas and employing the lobbyists to do the work are a few decades behind us on this.
Absolutely. Next week, we'll have returning one of our favorite guests, Diane Waddles-Goldstein. She's an important member of LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and she'll probably talk about this subject a little more detailed there. So getting back to Colorado, another big story of the Colorado was the first day. I think they made $1 million in
not too shabby, right?
Sales. Not a bad start. They also were reported to have, by the end of that day, start running out of the marijuana that they had. And I told one of my friends, just send them here to California. We're good.
Yeah, Denver. But you could be at Barry's store in 14, 16 hours.
They had many people. There were 4 or 5 hour waits in line in Colorado. Now, that's a first day of a historic.
That's a great line to be hanging out in.
That's pretty good.
You are going to make new friends.
But remember, the people in that line are not stoned yet. They're waiting to get stoned.
We don't know that.
Oh, that's true.
They might just be running out of what they have in the 4 hour wait.
You planned ahead. You said to join for the line. I'm going to help you.
So, they made a lot of money.
I know somebody got to the front of that line and went, wait, this isn't for the new iPhone? Oh, man.
This is a little off topic, but in the old days in Berkeley, I opened a Berkeley Patients Group back in 2000. Berkeley's up in Northern California. And it was the 5th one in the whole state. And so people would travel from all over the state to visit Berkeley Patients Group. And we had those huge lines. We had a line, I don't think it was 4 hours, but it wouldn't be unusual to wait for an hour in line.
Absolutely.
We actually had to turn people at the door when the line filled up. We would say, come back in 20 minutes, whatever. Right. And so we actually had a staff person walking up and down the line, passing out joints and serving drinks, just keeping them entertained because people can get grumpy waiting for weed.
Oh, I get
that
it.
is so
that'd
Northern
be a cool
California.
job to have.
I love that.
I think that'd be a cool job. Like, go to people in line and give them joints and candies and stuff and entertain them.
We were serving coffee, coffee to go. Can I get you a latte?
I apply for that job.
So,
I'm not going to be honest. It didn't pay all that well.
So let's talk about all the stories, all the false stories.
Well, that was the other story out of Colorado was that there were a lot of I don't know if it was malicious or what, but in every issue today we have fake stories. We have a whole site, The Onion, and many other sites
about the phony news program, right?
Yeah.
It's like
all
the rage
important
right now,
for all of our listeners to know. You need to do your research before you go. Hey, I just heard
you you
the story.
share the story on Facebook.
Like me, I shared the
think
story
about
with
it.
Barry and Don. I told them, did you guys hear that over 12 dispensaries got raided on December 31st in Colorado?
And I
they
hadn't heard
they hadn't
anything
heard it.
like
Well,
that.
we were with another friend of ours that's a very educated person, and she agreed with me because she read the same story,
Right,
and it was
right.
all a hoax. It wasn't true. So
We
even we
had
got
12 dispensaries raided. That
12
wasn't true.
dispensaries
37
raided.
37 people dead.
Yes.
That was not true.
Right, that was not true. There was
something else that happened,
Yeah, there was something else on that media thing.
It was 37 yeah, I'm blanking on it now, but there were all these like silly stories. And one thing we have to realize in this day and age of the great democratization of media, where there's Facebook and Twitter and everybody's got their own blog, is that it's not necessarily true when you read it.
Yeah.
Just
No,
because somebody
Check your
typed it and
resources.
put a photo next to it doesn't
Well,
make
it looks
it
so
true.
official.
It
what
did
I
look
read.
official. And if I look at the bottom, see where the website came from, and it didn't say the Onion. It said
No, it's like
something-
Newsnet or
Yeah, it
something
was
like
Yeah,
something
yeah.
Because
that
they're getting very
wasn't
sophisticated now,
obviously
a joke,
hoax.
yeah.
So know what we're talking about. When we come back,
Running out of marijuana. That was the other one. They ran out of marijuana.
They ran out of
in Colorado.
marijuana,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm
And
sure
they-
some places did. But
some
they-
places did.
I'm thinking the state of Colorado is doing just fine for marijuana.
Well, that's
right now.
interesting. When we come back, let's talk a tad more about Colorado because there were a few more stories running out and the prices that were changing
Well,
during the day.
right, right, going up.
And then we're going to talk about this federal lawsuit coming out of
Great.
San Diego.
Okay.
So we'll be back in just a minute.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey, everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
And welcome back. We're talking marijuana. I'm Barry Kramer
I'm Yamile Bolaños.
And I'm Don Duncan from Americans for Safe Access.
And I'm Dan Gabriel,
from Americans for
from a Glocka approved comedian.
Too true. So we were talking Colorado, a couple of other things on the Colorado agenda, and the misinformation. I think the story that the media ate up the most was that Colorado is running out of pot.
Right.
There were some dispensaries in Denver and some of the really concentrated population areas that were, with these 5-hour lines, were worried. They had 25 patients in their medical marijuana place the day before. And then on this day, they may have had like 500 patients come through. So they quickly ran out of edibles, I heard. Those, of course, are, you do have to make those, and there's a limited number of them.
Sure, well, it's
But the marijuana has grown
Yeah.
in
But no, they got plenty of cannabis in Colorado. They're not hurting.
They
for
might not
cannabis.
have had them on site, but it wasn't very long before it came back in.
I've seen some of these grow rooms out there, and believe me, they're not going to run out anytime soon.
But you did hear quickly how the market adjusts to those kinds of
Oh, yeah.
stories
The market
because
forces.
things that were selling Ace that were selling for $30 or $40 were now going to be $50 to $60. If you were from out of state, I heard they were charging you
double.
more for double.
I have
for
to
your-
say, if I was a tourist and I paid for a ticket to fly into Denver and they want to charge me double, I'd probably get on the plane and come home. That's not very
Say,
nice.
okay, Denver, see you later. But
Well, but they had to
everyone-
take care of the residents first.
Well,
you
but
know?
now we're not talking here about a medical situation. If you have a medical cannabis law, you should take care of your patients first. 'cause
course,
that's
this is legal.
But this is the open marketplace, and if you're going to say to people, you may come to Colorado and smoke legal pot. then
Not only
don't-
say it, but want it.
It's the law. They're inviting us into the state. Then, don't gouge us.
I
when
can
we get there.
understand a little bit of price hike for outsiders, but double. is a slap in the face.
I think it would be totally different if the folks were flying in from out of state to game the system, right?
Right,
They're going
right,
to come in
right.
and they take advantage. But
they
they're not. This law was designed for tourists.
Right, you can't
They're
buy as
included.
much as
As
a
a
resident.
resident,
You're not
yeah.
allowed.
Fair enough, but I think that personally, if it were me, if I were in town, because I was a cannabis tourist and I was excited about the first day of legal marijuana,
Right.
I would be offended, and I might be tempted to just walk out of that establishment and find one that's not doubling the
Now,
price.
can you fly out of the Denver airport with a huge sack of weed?
No. You cannot go through TSA
It's federal,
Okay.
federally.
Now, some airports are more
forbidden.
tolerant than others. Obviously, like in the Bay Area, they don't really care.
Oakland.
I have a friend who they were looking through her clothes, and they pulled it back, and there were 4 jars there of medical marijuana with the labels on it. And the TSA agent smirked and closed the suitcase and sent it on
Especially if
through.
you're flying within your state. If you're
Yeah.
not going...
Well, I was
But it
with
really
the-
matters where
The
you
TSA
originate.
agent doesn't know where you're going. It's just
It's on your...
going
it's
through.
usually
on your
This
ticket.
is
It's
San
on your
Francisco,
ticket,
right?
yeah.
The San Francisco TSA agent lives in San Francisco
Right.
and is in that cultural and values milieu of San Francisco.
right.
You can't count on that in Denver. We don't know what the TSA
I
agent
flew
is.
out of
That's
LA.
not necessarily true. The San Francisco TSA agent is a 60-year-old Filipino lady who doesn't know, who's not
She's smoking more
necessarily.
pot than the rest of us. Whatever. We don't know.
That's my auntie. I have a better chance playing the Filipino card.
You play what you have. You play the hand that's dealt you.
I flew out of LAX with a mutual friend one time, and he had a little container with 4 med sticks in it. And when the TSA agent asked him what that was, he said, "It's my medicine. I have a letter of recommendation to use it as medicine." And the guy looked at him, and he didn't want to get into it. He goes, "Okay."
What's a
He
med
just
stick?
let it go. A med stick.
It's a joint.
A joint. A med stick.
A med stick. It's
I've
the
never
new
called
speak,
it a
right?
stick.
Well, that's what he called it.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah,
It's
a
A
awesome.
joint for your
A
joints.
med stick.
Yeah. But he let him go. So,
So
that
I
was only
think that
4
the
joints,
news
so.
picked up on probably a few of the operators, and we know
I'm
from
sure,
the
sure.
operators that are here
Anecdotes,
and the different
anecdotes,
kinds of operators here in the city of Los Angeles. Some people just go, "Hey, here's an opportunity. I'm going to gouge the hell out of this."
But when you look at the media focus, hoaxes aside, because I happen to think the whole like onion style reporting is funny, But you setting aside the hoaxes, the reporters seem to be looking for a problem, a scandal, something went terribly wrong, and I think the fact that they're reporting on price increases and wait times in lines and other trivia.
That's
There's a
huge.
lot.
That's an
It's
example of
huge.
how well it went.
Yeah.
There's
It
nothing
went
else
so
to
well.
say.
It was
Yeah.
congratulations
To
Colorado.
for what they
Yay,
did.
Colorado.
I mean,
You did
it's
a good
awesome.
job.
They
Yeah.
are the first,
John
and
Denver was on to something.
And it wasn't
eager.
like Washington that still messed up. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Washington.
We did that last
Yeah.
show.
That's true.
Google that. It's a mess in Washington State.
Well,
Colorado's
Washington
making
will
it happen.
continue following this story because it's it will be rolled out later this year, and we'll see how that
It's going to roll out and roll over the patients. is what's
Roll
gonna
them,
happen.
roll them up. So, and the other Washington, D.C., now has a federal lawsuit against it from San Diego, back here in
Out of
California.
the federal appellate district in San Diego, California,
Tell us about that.
Attorney Lance Rogers has a lawsuit and appeal. This was a case they lost in district court last year, and Mr. Rogers has picked it up. It's a lawsuit against the federal government, challenging their jurisdiction to prosecute people for medical cannabis offenses in states where it's legal. This is a 10th Amendment argument, and although this has been batted around for many years, it's never actually
States'
gone to
right.
the federal, the appellate level. The 10th Amendment basically has to do with the division of powers between the states, and it says that if a power is not reserved to the federal government and forbidden to the states, and it falls to the state and the people respectively. And basically what that means is that unless the Constitution says you can't do something, you can if you're a state. If it's not forbidden to the states, then they have that authority. And so the federal government has really claimed the field when it comes to regulating and enforcing drug law. But what this lawsuit alleges is that under the 10th Amendment, we're no longer talking about drugs of abuse. We're talking about medicine, and the federal government does not have the authority to come into a state with legal medical cannabis and usurp the state's authority in that regard. Maybe a long shot, frankly, given
This
that
is an appellate
this
case.
is going to the appellate level.
Going to the appellate.
They lost in district court last year. It's going to the federal appellate court in San Diego, which is the next stepping stone to the Supreme Court. So that
Are
would be
they
the
a
next stop.
fairly
to this.
liberal court? I know we have some liberal courts
No, they're
here
not.
in California.
Compared to the rest of the country, the appellate district in San Diego is pretty liberal. But let's face it, it is San Diego. It's a Navy town.
And even if they
Yeah.
do get to the Supreme Court, I don't trust those old guys to.
Neither do I,
to have-
frankly. Yeah, but
Not this Supreme Court.
So
for
lots of
sure.
things could happen. They've submitted briefs to the appellate court, so there's going to be an appellate decision of some sort. And then the Supreme, if they lose at the appellate level, then the Supreme Court gets to decide whether or not they want the case. They don't automatically take the case. So there's a lot of hurdles before this could get to the Supreme Court, and anything can happen in court. Traditionally, the 10th Amendment has not been a very strong tool for keeping the federal government in check, and In
Yeah, I
fact,
would imagine they like to
up until
stomp
the
on that a little
1980s
bit.
or so, the 10th Amendment was considered sort of a trivial, kind of symbolic part of our Constitution anyway. People would actually say, well, the 9th and the 10th Amendments, which deal with the
Right.
rights and powers of the states and federal government, they say, well, those are just descriptions of how our system works. You can't really cite them in court. And that's changing now. People are sort of coming back to the 9th and 10th Amendments.
I think that's a cultural war thing. That
I
we've
think
hit
it's
some major
actually a
cultural-
consequence of the sort of resurgence of conservatism in the 1980s, in the Reagan era, of the sort of anti-government sentiment of sort of a fear and suspicion of government. And I think that that sort of revived interest in the actual functionality of the 9th and 10th Amendments. So now we're, of course, being very dull and wonky on our show, but that's a consequence of that for our side, of course, is that it's made a safer place for a 10th Amendment challenge to the...
When does this challenge go to the appellate court?
The briefs are submitted. Apparently, they're not going to have oral arguments in this case. They're just going to read the briefs, which is not necessarily a great sign for the appellate. Because if the court were seeing something that they want to talk about, they would call them in for oral arguments, and so that indicates the court doesn't really want any more information.
It's easier to say no to a piece of paper.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And so we don't know where this is going to go. Like I said, the 10th Amendment has never before been the great, hatchet against the federal government. But who knows? We heard
It's good to have a lawsuit going on anyway,
It's
right?
good.
It's a tool anyway.
It keeps the fight alive.
It'll make some noise.
Americans for Safe Access just had a federal lawsuit that we took all the way to the appellate level in Washington, D.C., one step from the Supreme Court.
And
that was the rescheduling lawsuit.
yeah, absolutely.
And it largely dealt with some of the same issues around the federal authority and how arbitrary they could be. And we ultimately were not able to prevail at the appellate level.
It seems like the scheduling is the head of the beast to me.
It's one
it
of the
seems
heads
like
of the whole thing,
everything
yeah.
else is just we're dealing with symptoms. But if we could just get it rescheduled, everything else would fall in.
It might. Rescheduling is a step on the way. If cannabis were taken off of Schedule 1 and put onto Schedule 2, that would not make it legal. And it would not make it necessarily legally accessible to people, although it would be a step down that path, and it would be a huge shot across the bow of the Department of Justice to say, no, Schedule 1 is defined as having no medical value. It's a drug of high potential for abuse and no medical value. So marijuana and LSD and other drugs are in Schedule 1, but in Schedule 2, you have things like cocaine and methamphetamine and heroin, because those do have medical uses under certain circumstances.
Really?
Yeah. Have you ever been to the dentist and they put the spray in your mouth?
Cocaine.
They don't call it cocaine. They have a different name for
what it is.
but it's cocaine. That's that spray that numbs your gums. It's cocaine.
Cocaine, yes.
Chronic.
You'll go to the dentist more often now,
That's why
won't
my
you?
dentist sniffs it also.
Exactly, yeah.
He gives one for you and then one for
He
me.
didn't have a tooth.
One for you, one for me.
One for you, two for me. One for you,
It's all
three
for me.
for
It's all for me. It's all for me.
Meth is Schedule 2?
Methamphetamine was originally developed as a diet aid.
Yes.
But yes, methamphetamine
Now, the
is
proper
used to
question
treat
is,
hyperactivity.
marijuana is more dangerous than meth?
I'm medicated on amphetamine. I'm medicated on Adderall. That's
Adderall, right.
It's amphetamine, yeah.
To be scientifically valid, methamphetamine that's sold on the street is not a pharmaceutical drug.
No.
But the molecule that
Components.
makes it up is Adderall and all that stuff has all that in there.
That disembodied voice that you're hearing is Angelo, our engineer. It is his birthday today. Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday, Angelo.
We love ya.
Struggling with that Adderall problem here.
Yes.
So we're all making appointments for our dentist.
So,
and,
so scheduling is important, but it's not the ultimate fix, but it's definitely an important one. And I think it would really, to have successfully rescheduled, would have really put a nail in the coffin of federal anti-cannabis laws, because it's really hard to say this is a medicine. It's in Schedule 2. Those are medicines. By definition, a Schedule 2 substance is a medical substance because it can be prescribed by a doctor, but somehow it has to be illegal. That just does not fly. So.
And
But
if they
cocaine's
were like
illegal
to put
and
Cocaine is a controlled substance.
Oh.
If you have a triplicate prescription from your doctor, you can get cocaine.
Okay.
Or heroin or methamphetamine. It can be prescribed. Now, doctors don't do it because they don't want to get in trouble for doing it. Because just like in cannabis, the feds are down on doctors. They're down on doctors, especially pain doctors, all over the country.
Right.
My mother is a chronic pain patient for decades now. She's been suffering with chronic pain, and it's a terrible condition. And her doctor is constantly harassed by the Drug Enforcement Administration because he specializes specializes in pain management, which means he prescribes Schedule
lot of pain,
3 and 4 drugs all day long.
Right.
Yeah.
Dilaudid and Percocets and all of that. And so they hassle him. And it's like, he's treating old ladies who are suffering. Like, come on. So this is we're in a bigger problem, too, in our country, where cops are telling doctors what to do. And that's not okay. And now we're way off Colorado. Sorry about
No,
that.
and almost
No,
into
it's okay,
Michigan,
no.
and almost into Michigan, because I want to ask you about, there's a new law that was just passed, and we'll talk about it.
why don't we
Let me
talk
wrap
about-
up on the federal lawsuit, because I got off on that
Okay.
tangent
Yeah,
too. But if this is approved at the appellate level, either side could go on to the Supreme Court. If they win at the appellate level and the Supreme Court doesn't take it, that would essentially enshrine within that Southern Appellate District the law that the federal government can't enforce. Now, it doesn't apply nationwide because the
Right,
federal appellate
of course.
structure doesn't work that way. But theoretically, if they win in San Diego, there could be a little island in the United States where the federal government's not technically allowed to enforce.
Oh, that would be
Because
great.
they won at the appellate level, that would stop with it?
If the Supreme Court refuses to review it, then a victory at the appellate level stands.
But they have one of the
Oh.
fiercest United States Attorney's office
I'm
in
sure
San Diego.
that would be appealed if it happened. And
Oh, my God.
I have to say, with no disrespect to the attorney and the plaintiffs, it's a long shot lawsuit for sure. But if they did prevail, I know the federal government would appeal it because they can't let that stand.
Yeah.
Right.
And it seems like the Supreme Court would have to take that case because how can we have one federal appellate district where medical cannabis is legal and 11 others where it's not? That doesn't. I don't think that'll stand.
Yeah. Well, as we get more and more legal areas of the state in many other ways, it's going to be harder for the federal government to continue to have this stand in any way, shape, or form, really. We have legal pot in the state right now. How do they say that they're going to lock somebody up in Arizona or in Idaho
Or
let's say that-
Fresno.
or whatever, and you can be legal in another state? It's very crazy. Let's take a little break. We're going to come back and let's talk about that Michigan governor and what he's doing over
yes,
there,
yeah,
and maybe we'll talk about the DEA agent as well.
Excellent,
Who's
okay.
changing jobs and
Jumping to the
midstream.
other side, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a break. We'll see you.
Defecting.
We'll see you on the other side.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Podcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Podcast Network.
And welcome back to Talking Marijuana. We had an interesting subject pop up out of Michigan, a legal marijuana state. They have a medical marijuana program instituted there in Michigan. But this past week, I believe, January 2nd, this comes out of, I don't know where, dailychronic.net, very reliable source. I don't know exactly what the original source of this was. CNN, okay, is where this comes out of. Scott Gaick wrote that the Michigan governor signs a pharmaceutical-grade medical marijuana law. So Governor Rick Snyder signed into law a law that creates a new pharmaceutical-grade medical marijuana program to run in conjunction with the state's existing medical marijuana program. The law reclassifies marijuana, we're talking about classification, at the state level to a Schedule II status, but will only take effect if the United States follows suit and reschedules cannabis at the federal level. Marijuana is currently classified at Schedule I drug. And this is coming out of basically a company in Canada who has some sort of pharmaceutical grade marijuana that this governor believes actually exists and can be regulated through pharmacies.
It's amazing to me that a state of the United States of America would change its laws to accommodate a foreign pharmaceutical company, but I don't know why that amazes me. The whole thing is corrupt. But
Yeah, I don't either because it's all about money.
This is silly because first of all, what's pharmaceutical grade? Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Because
Well, it means it's been tested, I think, is
we
what
can
they're...
do that here in the States. We don't need a Canadian company to bring us
come in and tell us
pharmaceutical
how to
grade.
do that.
And I'll tell you, if the pharmaceutical cannabis from Canada is of the same variety that their non-pharmaceutical cannabis is, it smells like hay and it doesn't get you high. So,
Oh, no, we just lost Canada.
oh, damn it. Well, so listen, this thing is an industry end run around the state program. To participate in the pharmaceutical cannabis program, you have to give up your state ID card.
Yes.
So that's
the real catch there, is that
Yeah.
these will run concurrent, these two programs. But if you want to be, when it becomes law, when the federal government reschedules, if you want to be in this pharmaceutical grade program, you have to give up your Michigan medical marijuana card. You no longer can grow for yourself. You no longer can buy any of the regular medical marijuana. You'll have to buy from the state, who you know is going to be growing the real bomb shit. You know?
this is similar to
the
what's
stuff that will really help
It's like
you.
the difference between government cheese and smoked Gouda. It's whatever
True
you're
that.
going to get from them is
Is
going to be
what you're gonna
awful,
get, yeah.
and all of the money is going to go to a Canadian company.
And so
it's not even going to stay.
I know that's
in the,
ridiculous. I can't even understand why they would let a foreign company come into the state and be the one that, distributes marijuana
Well,
to
it's
the
money.
patients.
And we
Well,
know
it's all
that
about
on the
one of
basis
the
it's
lawmakers was
money.
commenting on this too, saying, "Why are we bending our law?"
Yeah, she said. She actually
Say her
said.
name. Give her some
yes,
credit.
give
Why are we spending taxpayer time and resources for an out-of-state corporate constituent who may or may not come to this state, said Senate Minority Leader Gretchen Whitmer at a
Yay,
hearing.
Gretchen.
And we're not doing squat for anything to help the current
Is she a
constituents
Democrat?
who
Yes,
cannot access
She's a Democrat.
medical
yes.
marijuana.
Yeah,
She is
good
a
for her.
Democrat.
She's a good Democrat.
And Senator Rick Jones, the Republican, says he hopes the law will begin the process of getting marijuana cultivation out of the homes and into the hands of pharmaceutical companies.
Or he's going to make a lot of money.
Time to get marijuana out of the houses and put it somewhere else, he said. Let the pharmaceutical companies grow it and sell it in
You
pharmacies.
don't have to sell out the program to get marijuana out of home cultivation. First of all, home cultivation is good.
Right.
But if you want to professionalize and regulate and standardize a commercial product, which is the way we do with every commercial product in the United States, fine, license and permit growers and put it in a commercial production facility and grow it in the United States, in Michigan.
Absolutely.
And keep it here. We don't have to import marijuana.
And we have
silly.
across country
Yeah,
lines.
and we have
across-
lots of people here who are on that legal bandwagon. And as a point in case, we have a DEA agent.
Yes.
She's jumping ship.
I'm jumping ship. I'm
Jumping
gonna jump to this because this
To the
blew
DEA.
me away.
Well, before we get to this agent, let me point out something about
Please do.
pharmaceuticalization, because people are afraid of that, and there are definitely some pitfalls that we should be aware of, like what we're seeing in Michigan, where lobbyists basically step on the program. But you know what else is noteworthy about pharmaceuticalization is that there are compounds in cannabis that might be perfect for pills. There's all sorts of exciting stuff about high blood pressure, diabetes. There's Canadians are working on diabetes medicine, basically. Sleep,
aid.
all sorts of great stuff. And if they can do that, more power to them. Send it to the pharmacy at Walgreens, and people like my mother will go in there and buy it because it seems like medicine to them. It's in a pill, and it seems that's how medicine comes. But don't stop the cultivation of marijuana for the patients. And when we regulate medical cannabis, we can do it like a botanical medicine. We don't have to regulate it like a pharmaceutical drug. There's no reason why you can't go in your backyard and grow echinacea, St. John's wort, saw pomelo. All of that you can grow for yourself if you want to, or you can buy it in a properly but less stringently regulated commercial market. That's the direction to go.
And
We've
there
got
is
to
a
regulate,
regulatory scheme
but
for
it's different than
for
pharmaceutical
herbal.
drugs. Exactly. They have they have scientific standards for the identification of the plant because there is a question in botanical medicine about whether you're growing the right plant. So there's, is this plant proper? Is it produced under sanitary conditions and packaged? Is there a dosage standard? Do we know the side effects? All of that is regulated with botanical medicine, but it doesn't go through the FDA, and it's not enforced by the Department of Justice.
I really hope that's the future.
That
of
needs to be our future.
medicine.
Botanical medicine is where the future lies, because if we go the other route, if we go no regulation, we're going to keep losing ground because it's eroding our credibility. If we go the pharmaceutical route, companies are going to take it away from us, and we're not going to be able to cultivate our own medicine, and we're not going to be able to do that experiment with self-medication that's so important to medical cannabis.
Absolutely.
The middle ground is botanical medicine. I'll rant and rave about that more later.
No, that's good. No, and we have talked about marijuana being regulated through a botanical homeopathic organization.
And it is underway right now.
And that organization is...
It's called the American Herbal Products Association.
Correct.
They're the leading voice of the herbal products industry, including herbal medicines. And they have been the ones keeping the FDA from squashing down herbal medicine for the last decade or so. They've been pushing the feds back, saying, no, you're not going to take away our echinacea, our St. John's wort. We're going to regulate this ourselves. And so I think of them as sort of the Americans for Safe Access of the broader herbal medicine.
The federal
movement.
government's trying to take away our St. John's
For
wort?
decades, they want to make it FDA regulated, no longer available.
Words are ugly.
It's a desire to keep regulating, and whether it was some inappropriate behavior in herbal products, it's like they've been able to stamp that out to a large degree because
that's what a regulatory
model.
does.
It's just different from pharmaceuticals, and I think that's the future of medical cannabis in the United States. At least I hope that's the future, because that's the future that leaves the patients alone, basically, and lets people keep cultivating their own medicine if they want to, or they can buy it in a commercial setting if they want to. And that's the thing, is they need a choice. They can also choose to join the industry.
Yeah, and they are choosing. That's a great segue. And they are choosing to join the industry. This is from the HuffPost. Matt Sledge wrote in December about this. He's been a cop, a sheriff's deputy, and a DEA agent, and now Patrick Moen, M-O-E-N, is taking on his latest assignment, helping marijuana. But he isn't going undercover. He's going to work for a legal business that supports the marijuana industry. He recently left his job at the DEA in Portland, where he tracked cocaine and methamphetamine traffickers, to work for a small private equity firm in Seattle called Privateer Holdings. He is the company's managing director of compliance and senior counsel, and he will guide through the tricky legal waters of investing in marijuana-related businesses in one of the two states that has legalized the drug, while keeping federal prosecutors happy. His company will not directly support marijuana growers and distributors, yet it does aim to invest in ventures like marijuana strain review websites and business parks for growers. And so he is going to supply all the structure for marijuana to grow.
You said he's the lead counsel. Is he this guy's an attorney?
Senior counsel.
Senior counsel. He's a lawyer.
Yeah.
Wow, huh?
Yeah,
that's one smart DEA agent.
Yeah,
I guess, yeah.
We should,
he
we
talks.
should encourage this. We should try to get these guys out of the business.
Yeah. I think I was thinking we'd bring him in as the dope of the week, but you totally turned that around to me. That we should encourage more DEA agents.
He's going in the right direction. He's going from blocking medical cannabis to facilitating.
He sees the reality,
and
that's
he's
going
to
on.
know a lot of the roadblocks that are going to pop up.
So he'll be able to sidestep them or jump over them.
So this was sort of.
So he's taking advantage of his position that he had in order to advance his financial situation in the world. It's so nice how marijuana is making all these people rich. So nice.
Well, I don't know what the market for that kind of company is. It frankly sounds a little esoteric to me.
It does.
So they may have market data I don't have, but...
well, these are a lot of companies that are coming up right now, and we'll see
10, 15, 20 years down the road, but we'll see.
Everything seemed 10 or 15, 20 years down the road. It's all
year.
jumped up quite a bit on the timetables. But
this whole medical marijuana, the modern medical marijuana movement dates back to the 1970s.
Absolutely. So that took a long time.
Yeah, there definitely was a lot of groundwork to lay.
But when it moves, it starts to move quickly,
sure.
and that's what we've been saying.
So,
so this was an interview with the HuffPost and this guy, and so some of the questions were, what do your former colleagues at the DEA think? And he says, some of his answers made my blood boil, I had to say, but I'll try and read them here.
Yeah.
My overall experience with former colleagues has been overwhelmingly positive. I was actually kind of surprised at that response, but they were really very supportive. It's basically an extension of how my family and friends reacted. It was important to me when I was making this transaction to get feedback from family, friends. I wanted to make sure they viewed this favorably, and I wasn't sure how they would take it. Seems like me when I was in my 20s and 30s talking to people about that. And then the HuffPost says, the DEA, of course, is charged with enforcing marijuana laws. Do you see your new line of work as a break with what you were doing? I look at it more as an evolution.
Please.
The DEA is evolving. When I was with the DEA, I primarily focused on large-scale trafficking of so-called hard drugs, and I didn't work a lot of marijuana cases. It was never a priority for me personally, and I think that attitude is shared by my former colleagues. So it was never a priority, is what he says.
So all the DEA agents in California that do raids, they're not on the same page with him.
It's their priority for
but
them.
not because
But
he's higher up, and they're
you can have different priorities.
So HuffPost says marijuana wasn't a priority for frontline agents. Is focusing on marijuana a bad way to get ahead with the agency? And he says, I guess you could say there's kind of a hierarchy within the DEA of which cases are sexy and exciting. Thank you very much for talking about people's lives that way. And those that aren't. And that really really that reflects, I think, the priorities that the agents feel in terms of which of these drugs are most harmful to society. Cocaine and heroin, methamphetamine, it's basic advancing. It's all merit-based. You make good cases and you do work. And I don't think there's any kind of bias one way or of another. It's, are you a capable investigator? So you don't have priorities as investigator, although we know all of our DEA agents.
Well, some are gung-ho and some aren't, that's for sure. But so cannabis is not sexy. I guess that's a good thing. As far as the DEA is concerned.
And he's been a good advocate for us on our banking issue. At the DEA, you must have done work, the HuffPost is saying, looking at the financing for illegal drug enterprises. Do you see any parallels in the difficult work of obtaining access to banking services for legal marijuana operations? Well, if we don't give the industry access to banking like any other industry would have, we're creating the potential for problems. If you're forcing a business into a cash-only business, you're only creating the possibility for theft and robbery and etc. This is what advocates are always saying. And here it's a DEA
out of the
agent.
mouth of the DEA.
It's about time.
But he's not saying it until he's out of the DEA.
Of course.
And then
Somebody from LEAP should call him and
well, Diane will be here next week, so
yeah,
we'll be able to talk to Diane about this.
And make him join LEAP. Like, it's he's not allowed to say this shit and not be supporting it. It's really. It's all okay. Once I realized I could make a huge ton of money in this, then I jumped on board.
Okay,
that's all I'm hearing.
That's all I heard.
So really,
I was a DEA
I think our
agent,
mission might be to just convince people that they can make a huge ton of money.
And then it all
becomes legal and everybody loves the world.
And the politicians will hook, line, and sinker, right? You're going to make lots of money, Mr. Politician. Okay, let's do it.
So here's the dark side of this.
The dark side.
I get to an article that I came across, and again, my blood boiled because this article is talking as if this is a new subject, and it has been since the 70s when drug laws started coming into effect. This is out of the Atlantic, again, a very prestigious magazine, and this is Connor Friedersdorf, and he writes, "It is immoral to cage humans for smoking marijuana. That's why Colorado and Washington have the most moral drug laws in America right now. Under the law in 48 states, here's what can happen when an adult is thought to possess marijuana. Men with guns can go into his home, kick down his door, force him to lay face down on the floor, restrain him with handcuffs, drive him to a police station, and lock him in a cage. If he is then convicted of possessing marijuana, a judge can order that he be locked in a different cage, perhaps for years. There are times when locking human beings in cages is morally defensible if the person commits murder, rape, assault, or transgressing others' rights, but it is immoral to lock people in cages for possessing or ingesting a plant that is smoked by millions every year with no significant harm done, especially when the vast majority of any harm done is actually borne by the smoker, not society." So I'm reading this, and this is what we talked about before I ever got into the business of medical marijuana, before I ever, was an advocate for medical marijuana. We were incarcerating and keeping people in jail over a weed and their cellmate or the person next to them had killed somebody or raped somebody. If I'm going to be sitting in a jail cell for that long, I'm going to learn a lot from this guy. I'm going to come out a criminal.
Yes.
I didn't go in a criminal,
but
I'm going to come out a criminal. And this article is amazing. I recommend it. It's recent in The Atlantic. Again, it was written by Connor Friedersdorf, and we really should
very good article.
Understand this.
It's sad that in Colorado, marijuana recreational use is legal, and there's people in prison for the rest of their lives.
This is
life without parole for marijuana. It's not fair.
You were telling me about cases
in the state of California. I believe that there's 47 people incarcerated for life without parole because of medical. Because of marijuana.
We have a couple of minutes, and there are at least, I think, there's patients in not patients, people in Colorado that are serving time.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
that's
There's
what I'm
somebody.
saying.
There's people in
Yeah.
Colorado
Is that-
serving time.
And down the
Because-
street, they're selling it.
Yeah. Down the street, they're
That's
selling
gotta.
it.
They're in line
for 5 hours
waiting
Enrage
for
those
it.
Yeah.
people.
That's
Can you
kind of what
imagine
it's
being
about.
in a Colorado jail for medical marijuana and hearing that?
And
this
not only
news
those
story
people, but the
came in?
families of those people,
Yeah,
the people
everybody.
they worked for before they went into jail. It's been horrible.
Yeah.
So
Can
just
they
have-
Scratching
retroactively
the
free the
surface.
people who in Colorado
We
for,
hope.
We
for
could.
We'll keep our eye on
marijuana-related crimes?
We
That
certainly
would
have to
be-
push that.
That would be something good to do, right?
Yes.
At this point, we have run out of time. So we'll come back with some of these burning questions. They burn in my brain
Yes.
all the time, and we'll continue to talk about them. We've talked about them on shows before. We hope to see you next week, and thanks for tuning in.
Pura vida.
Pura vida.
Vida.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.